If there ever was a Shakespeare play for these turbulent political times, it is King Lear. The demise of a demanding king, the backstabbing power merchants who surround him, the chaos of war. The masterpiece is always timely, and the latest actor taking on this demanding character is Sir Anthony Hopkins. 30 years since he trod the boards as Lear on stage, he's now bringing him to Amazon Prime, where he embodies the aging king dividing his kingdom between his daughters.
Know that we have divided in three our kingdom. It is our fast intent to shake all cares and business from our age, conferring them on younger strengths, while we, unburdened, crawl toward death.
Hopkins is an actor beloved and feared for his work, whether in his Oscar-winning role as Hannibal Lecter in The Silence of the Lambs or his stifled butler in The Remains of the Day, where he managed to convey love and anguish with heartbreaking subtlety. King Lear is out today, and we spoke recently about his remarkable life and career and what drew him to this part, finally. Anthony Hopkins, welcome to the program. You know, we are all so familiar with your massive body of work, and it just strikes me as a really interesting question to ask you that you didn't really want to be an actor. You've said music and art were your first loves, and you sort of stumbled into acting by mistake. How so?
I wanted to be a musician. I wanted to be a pianist and a composer. I played the piano ever since I was a kid, 6 years of age. Anyway, when I was 17 and I was at a loss. I was in school, not qualified to do anything, hopeless at everything, academically, no sports, nothing like that. So I didn't know what I was going to do. And suddenly there was a scholarship for the Cardiff College of Music and Drama. So I thought, well, maybe I'll go and try a scholarship as an actor and see if I can sneak into the music department. Anyway, I'd never acted before in my life, and I did a piece from Othello, and I did the audition. I didn't know what I was doing, but I did the audition full of sound and fury, and they gave me the scholarship, much to my surprise. So that's how I started. I thought, well, this beats working for a living.
Well, let me ask you something, because it's really interesting to hear that 50 years ago, you got your big stage break by playing Sir Lord Laurence Olivier's understudy in the Strindberg play. And one day, as every actor dreams, the principal fell ill, couldn't play, and you stepped into the role. And I just wonder, you know, what you think about that serendipity and what he then said, the great man himself. Olivier wrote, "A new young actor in the company of exceptional promise named Anthony Hopkins was understudying me and walked away with the part of Edgar like a cat with a mouse between his teeth." That's pretty amazing. What did you think when you got that kind of validation?
I was an ambitious young kid, you know. I wanted to do everything and be everywhere, but I was scared stiff, and I was understudying Olivier. He seemed to take a shine to me because I was very strong, and he admired strong men, you know, because I was physically very strong and tough. And I think he valued that in actors. He said, you have to be strong, very healthy and fit. So he gave me an understudy part to understudy himself. And he'd never been ill in his life. He was, then he had cancer. And it was in those days they had to burn it out with radium treatment, I think. And I was told that, I was phoned one morning saying, "You're on stage tonight." I said, "You're kidding me." And I thought they were joking. And I went into the theatre for rehearsal. I'd learned the entire part. That's my thing, I always prepare. I went into the rehearsal with Robert Stevens and Geraldine McEwen, and Glenn Byam-Shaw was directing, and unfortunately Olivier's costume and uniform fitted me. But anyway, the play started, and I got a huge round of applause at the end of it, and apparently I'm told I was very good. I was far too young, but Olivier had come out of hospital. He'd visited the theatre. He was in a bathrobe or something, dressed up with his overcoat on, and stood at the back of the theatre to watch me. And he phoned me next day. He said, "How do you feel?" I said, "Well, I was scared." He said, "I bet you were." He said, "You did very well, dear boy." And he
But
said,
that,
any problems? I said, well, I went through about 3 shirts. I was so wet with perspiration and sweat. He said, well, that's tension. I said, how long will it take to
yeah.
get rid of that? He said, about 25 years.
That is a great story, and particularly that he got out of his sickbed basically and came to watch you. It is an amazing story. And you mentioned that one of your first roles was Othello, and you then took on a whole ream of Shakespearean roles. But I'm fascinated that you sort of mid Macbeth walked out and decided you just didn't want to do that anymore in 1973. What was going on in your career, in your life, in your relationship with Shakespeare at that time?
Well, I was a bad boy. I was trouble, you know. I was rebellious, restless, and I didn't fit in. And I think it was nothing to do with the feeling Welsh or inferior, but I just didn't feel I belonged anywhere. And I still have that feeling to this day. I never fit in quite easily with people in the acting business. I love working with actors, but I always feel slightly a bit of the outsider. And I think that's been my driving force, I suppose, if you want to call it that. And I wasn't a very good team player. And things went wrong during that production. And one day I said, that's it. And there was a director, famous director, John Dexter, who was a bit of a monster, but he was a great director. But he was a bully. And one day I said, that's it. I phoned my agent. I said, I'm not going in anymore. He said, you can't do that. You'll never work again. I said, I don't care. I don't care. I don't care. And I didn't. That was my attitude. I didn't care about anything. I look back over the years and I think, well, if I hadn't made that decision, it was probably the wrong decision, or I don't know. But I was motivated by, I think, restlessness, and anger, and arrogance, and all that. But I wouldn't be here today if I hadn't done that. So that's
it's
the way.
really interesting the way you describe all your, your own sort of feelings and the way you are. I want to play just for a moment. I know I'm leapfrogging a lot, but so many people know you for so many things, but especially the younger generation for the Hannibal Lecter. And I want to play, how kind of awful a psychotic you are in this performance, and what an amazing impact it's had. We're just going to play a clip for a moment.
Oh, Agent Starling, you think you can dissect me with this blunt little tool?
No. I thought that your knowledge...
You're so ambitious, aren't you? Do you know what you look like to me with your good bag and your cheap shoes? You look like a rube. A well-scrubbed, hustling rube with a little taste. Good nutrition's given you some length of bone, but you're not more than one generation from poor white trash, are you, Agent Starling? And that accent you've tried so desperately to shed, pure West Virginia. What does your father do? Is he a coal miner? Does he stink of the land? You know how quickly the boys found you, all those tedious, sticky fumblings in the backseats of cars, while you could only dream of getting out, getting anywhere, getting all the way to the apple pie.
I mean, it's chilling even today as we watch it. I wonder what your reaction to that is. You got an Oscar for playing that role, and I wonder how your acting life changed after that role.
My agent phoned one afternoon. I was in the theatre early. I was there early, getting ready to go on. And it was a long run, and I was getting tired and bored, wanting to break out. My agent sent me a script. He said, "Are you in the?" He said, "I want you to read a script called The Silence of the Lambs." And I thought it was I said, "Is it a children's story?" He said, "No, it's with Jodie Foster. And he played part of Hannibal Lecter. They're very interested in you playing it. So the script came, I read part of it. I phoned him up. I said, "Is this an offer or not?" And he said, "Well, it's not an offer. They're very interested." I said, "But I don't want to read anymore. This is one of the best parts I've ever read." So he phoned back an hour later. He said, "Jonathan Demme, the director's coming to see you tomorrow night. You're on." I said, "Okay." And I knew how to play it. I don't know why, but I know how to play these parts. It's a strange feeling, but It's in my muscles and in my nature, I guess. I guess I'm an actor by freaky chance. I don't know why. I'm not an intellectual, I'm not an educated person, but I have this instinct for it and a certain toughness and rawness in my nature.
You know, you've described your toughness and not being a gentle actor. And you did say to, you know, the TV movie critic Barry Norman back in 1993, the British critic, you know, after playing, you know, Lecter, Nixon, Hitler, all of those dark roles, you said, it's the certainty within them that's attractive, the unblinkered look into the darkness. I think I understand that for some reason. It's a pretty big admission, that.
Yes, and I can't quite understand anything about what I meant by that. I still don't get it, you know. But I've always had that instinct ever since I was a kid of the certainty of that life is tough and hard. And I came from a background, my father was a hard-working man, so was my grandfather, but there was a certain toughness about them. They didn't mince words, they weren't very touchy-feely. And I think that's what I did. It was beyond ego, it was just an instinct that forced me to look at life as it is. For example, in the Lear, can I jump to that for a moment?
You can, but I want to play. I want to ask you about that because I'm going to play a clip. So,
okay.
You know, you mentioned Lear, and you know we're circling all the way back in your career to Shakespeare, and of course it's been played by many greats. Your old buddy Sir Ian McKellen is doing it in the West End in Britain right now. Glenda Jackson, the other great British actress, is about to take on King Lear on Broadway. And now you're taking the film version. Before I play a clip, I want to know what it is about Lear that even fascinates you.
Well, I played it years ago, 30 years ago, in David Hare's production. It was a very good production. And I played Lear, but I was too young. I was 47. And I hammed it up and I didn't know what I was doing, but I was afraid of it. And I wasn't, you know, it was okay. But I knew I missed it because now I'm 80. I'm in my 81st year. Now I understand the muscle of the man, the power of the man, and about old age and about loneliness and about death. And I've always had that sense in my nature about death. And my favorite poems are about not death and mortality, but about the certainty of life, about the certainty of mortality. And like T.S. Eliot, I have seen the moment of my greatness flicker, and I have seen the eternal footman hold my coat and snicker, and in short, I was afraid. And I wanted to play Lear without the fanfares of bowing and scraping and trumpets, just as an old warrior who is impatient with everyone and has no time for nonsense. He only loves one creature, and that's his daughter, Cordelia, who I believe in childbirth, my wife was killed in childbirth, giving birth to her, so I treated her like a boy. I always, you know, gave her a sword and bow and arrow and fought with her, you know. So she was like a boy to me. But the other two girls, I didn't have any time for them. And this is in my nature as well. I'm not a very touchy-feely person. I don't have any friends much to speak of. This is my own, I don't want to talk about personal life, but I'm like that. My wife sometimes says, do you just enjoy solitude? I said, yes, I do.
I do want to play this clip. It's from the film that you're in, and it's a more modernistic, unusual adaptation of Lear. And this is the scene. You've just talked about Cordelia and how you treated her like a boy. In this scene, you're kind of disowning her. Let's just play it.
Better thou hadst not been born than not to have pleased me better.
My lord of Burgundy, what say you to the lady? Will you have her?
Give but that portion which yourself proposed, and I will make Cordelia Duchess of Burgundy.
Nothing, I have sworn. I'm firm.
I am sorry then. You have so lost a father that you must lose a husband.
Peace be with Burgundy. Since that respect and fortunes are his love, I shall not be his wife.
First, Cordelia, thee and thy virtues.
Here I seize upon.
Thou hast her, king. Let it be thine. We have no such daughter, nor shall ever see that face of hers again. Therefore begone without our grace, our love, our benison. Come!
It's very clear that you're not a touchy-feely father there. How do you feel when you look at that clip?
Well, I saw it recently. I was in Rome and I saw the film. I was moved, not by my own performance, I was moved by the nature of that scene because it's very Welsh. It's very part of my own life. And it sounds weird to say that because I don't know quite what I mean, but there's something I know about this, something in my nature I know. Maybe through experience with my parents, my father, my grandfather. There's a darkness that I don't want to make it sound mysterious, but there is something in there that moves me about the finality of love, about the finality of betrayal. And finally, they are not long the days of wine and roses. Off we go into the darkness.
Do you now, or when did you feel that acting was not a mistake?
Just recently. Recently, I was thinking, my goodness, I've had a long life. I've had an amazing life. I've had a great life. I've worked with some extraordinary people. And I am what I am today. And I look out of my window and I think, how on earth did I get here? And I can't really account for any of it. It was all chance. I was given so many breaks and I've made many, many mistakes. But I've managed to pull myself up again by the bootstraps and go on with it. So I know it's the only thing I can do. I have other hobbies. I paint and I play the piano and I compose music. But this is the one thing that I do and I love and I relish. And I hope I go on doing a few more things like that. But it's been the best life. And there was no mistake made. And one I will say one last thing. The happiest time of my life is now because I've get rid of self-consciousness, being free of self-consciousness, being free to realize that I'm not that important. None of us are that hot. We're here for a very limited time. And when we think we are important, think again because we're not. We're not important at all. And that's the great freedom I feel now. There's no escape. Life is terminal. I like that. It sounds like gallows humor, but I like that. It gives me an edge.
And on that gallows humor note, it's been a pleasure speaking to you. Sir Anthony Hopkins, thank you for joining me.
Thank you very much. Thank you.